When the holiday card never arrived, I knew. No call, no text, no Merry Christmas, Mom, only silence, a deliberate cutting silence. I checked my phone a dozen times that morning, each hour colder than the last. I opened our family group chat, empty, archived. My name had vanished, as if I'd been erased. That's when it hit me, not forgotten, cut off by my only son. My name is Evelyn Ross, 62 years old, semi-retired, though I still take on the occasional consulting job to keep my mind sharp. I once ran one of the most respected public relations firms in Chicago, Ross Communications. I built it from the ground up in my late 30s after divorcing my husband and choosing single motherhood over silent suffering. The world saw a woman who had it all together: sharp suits, polished statements, poise in every crisis. But behind the strong facade was a woman who had once cried herself to sleep with a baby monitor by her side and bills scattered on the kitchen table. I raised Darren alone. I did it without backup, without child support, without breaks. When other mothers had partners to share late-night diaper changes or school recitals, I stood alone in the crowd, beaming as if I were two people. I gave him a world of stability, even when I was crumbling behind the scenes. He was my reason, my pride, my best friend. And in the silence that now surrounds me, I often whisper to myself, I did everything for you, and yet it still wasn't enough. The changes started after Darren met Elaine. She was striking, composed in that cold, calculated way. She worked in corporate law, confident and ambitious. I respected that. But from the first dinner together, I sensed something performative in her presence, like she was always waiting to correct the room. She and Darren met at a tech law networking event. Within months, they were inseparable. She moved into his condo, and slowly, Sunday dinners at my house became too busy or we'll try next time. I convinced myself I was being paranoid. He was in love. People prioritize differently when they're in relationships. I'd done the same once. Still, I missed him. The first time she suggested boundaries, it was during a casual brunch. I was telling a story from Darren's childhood. He used to eat pancakes with a spoon because he liked the syrup to pool. Elaine laughed lightly and said, "We're really trying to establish healthier space between past and present. Boundaries are good for all of us, right?" I paused. Boundaries? Between a mother and her son? Darren looked uncomfortable but didn't say a word. That's when I first realized I wasn't losing Darren to love. I was losing him to someone who believed love had limits. Someone who thought family was negotiable. I found out Darren had moved when I called his old apartment to leave a message. The building manager said, "Oh, they left 2 months ago." Just like that, 2 months. I sat on my porch steps with the phone in my lap. My garden was blooming, roses I planted when Darren was a toddler. He used to pick them, hand them to me with sticky fingers. I waited, telling myself he'd tell me eventually, but more signs came. My grandson's birthday photos appeared on my cousin's Facebook feed: balloons, cake, a backyard party. I hadn't even known there was a party. I wasn't invited, not even a text. Then came the bank call. "Mrs. Ross, we tried to transfer the monthly college fund payment to Darren's account, but it's been closed on the receiving end." He closed the fund I'd set up since he was 10. I stood in my kitchen for hours, unable to move. I kept staring at a photo of him at age 6, grinning with 2 front teeth missing, holding a homemade Father's Day card he made for me. Because I was his everything then. Now, I was nothing. The subject line read, "Re-family communication." The sender, not Darren. Elaine Ross. I didn't know what I expected. An apology, maybe? A message from my son explaining things? But when I opened the email, the words were ice. "Evelyn, Darren and I have made the decision to create a healthier environment for our family. We ask that you respect our space and our wishes. Continued contact will not be welcome at this time. Kindly, Elaine Ross." There was no warmth, no empathy, just corporate detachment. The tone was that of someone canceling a dentist appointment, not severing a mother from her child. I reread the email 5, 6, maybe 10 times. The line that stuck out like a knife. Continued contact will not be welcome. What contact? I hadn't called or messaged in weeks. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was terrified of rejection. And now that rejection had arrived, officially, coldly, legally worded. And what did Darren say in all this? Nothing. His silence screamed louder than the message. It said, "This isn't just from her. It's from me, too." That night, I stared at the ceiling in the dark, my breath shallow, my chest heavy. Had I been too involved? Too loving? Too much? No, I wasn't the problem. But I was now the one being erased. I didn't know grief could feel this hollow. I wasn't mourning a death. There was no funeral, no casseroles from neighbors, no sympathetic glances from friends. This was an invisible death, a quiet burial of a relationship that had once been everything. I stayed inside, my curtains drawn. The tea I brewed every morning went untouched. People called. I let it ring. Once, my neighbor Georgia knocked with a lemon cake. "Haven't seen you in days," she said. "Everything all right?" I lied. "Just tired." Because what do you say? My son and his wife decided I'm no longer family? There's no Hallmark card for that. At night, I'd scroll through old photos on my phone. Darren in his cap and gown. Darren holding his newborn son. Darren with me, laughing in the kitchen as we made lasagna, his favorite. And now, blocked, deleted, replaced. They called it boundaries, but it felt like exile. Something inside me snapped. I took down every photo of Darren from my walls, gathered up birthday cards, school art projects, even that tiny pair of baby shoes I'd kept in a shadow box. It all went into a storage bin. I labeled it with shaking hands, before. Because that's what it was. Before her, before he changed, before I became a threat in their perfect little marriage. I didn't cry. Not this time. I was angry. Angry at Elaine for her manipulation. Angry at Darren for his silence. And angry at myself for raising a son who could be swayed so easily. I imagined scenarios where I stormed into his office, confronted him in front of his colleagues, told the world what he'd done. I dreamed of him calling in tears, begging for forgiveness, but the call never came. Just silence. Always silence. Still, beneath the fury, there was something else. A slow, gnawing ache that whispered, "What if this never gets better?" I started therapy. I told myself it was to deal with stress, maybe help me sleep. But the truth was, I needed to stop spiraling. I was drowning in grief no one could see. Margot, my therapist, listened quietly as I unraveled. "I gave him everything," I said. "My life revolved around him, and now he treats me like I'm toxic." Margot nodded. "Have you ever asked yourself who you are outside of being Darren's mother?" I blinked. That question haunted me for days. I had spent so long defining myself by the role I played in his life. Without it, who was I? At the hospital, I ran into Linda, an old friend who once mentored Darren during his internship. "He looks exhausted," she said. "I bumped into him a few weeks ago at a medical seminar. He barely spoke." I feigned disinterest, but my heart raced. Linda leaned in. "I hope it's okay to say this, but he doesn't seem happy. His wife, well, she speaks for him a lot. It was strange." I nodded slowly. That night, I couldn't sleep. Linda's words spun in my mind. Had he cut me off because he wanted to, or because he felt he had no choice? It didn't excuse him, but it made me wonder. Was my son still in there somewhere? The email came out of nowhere. Simple subject line, Mom. I hesitated before opening it. I don't even know where to begin. I'm sorry, I've made a lot of mistakes. I didn't know how to stop what had already started. I don't expect forgiveness, but if you're open to it, I'd like to talk. Darren. I stared at the message for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Every fiber in me wanted to shout, "Why now?" But I didn't. I typed Wednesday, noon, your place, I'll come alone. And I hit send. My hands were still trembling. He opened the door like a man expecting a punch. His eyes, those same hazel eyes that once sparkled when he saw me in the crowd at his school play, were dulled by guilt and something deeper. Weariness? "Hi, Mom." His voice cracked slightly. I hadn't heard it in almost a year. We sat in his pristine living room, both unsure of where to begin. "I didn't want to do this," he said. But Elaine said it was either distance or dysfunction. She made it sound like cutting you off was protecting our marriage. "And what did you believe?" I asked. He looked down. "I believed I had to choose." There it was. Not defiance, not cruelty, fear. He didn't choose her over me. He chose what he thought would keep his life from collapsing. My anger began to unravel. Elaine arrived 20 minutes into our conversation. She didn't smile. "I thought we agreed we weren't doing this," she said. Her tone was firm, almost condescending. Darren shifted uncomfortably. "Elaine, I invited her." She froze. "We talked about boundaries." "I know, but I need this." That pause, brief but heavy, told me everything. She didn't expect him to push back. I stood. "Elaine, I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to undo your marriage. I just want to understand what happened." She didn't reply, just left the room. And for the first time, Darren didn't follow her. That night, I sat at my desk with a glass of wine and wrote Darren a letter. Not to shame him, not to guilt him, just truth. "You broke my heart, Darren, but I raised you to be your own man. If protecting your family meant removing me, I wish you'd told me. I wish we could have found another way. I forgive you, not because you asked, but because I refuse to live with bitterness. I will always love you, and if you want your mother back, I'll be here, not waiting, just living." I folded the letter, walked to his house the next morning, slipped it into the mailbox, and walked away. He came to my door a week later, tears in his eyes. "I read it every night," he said. "I kept trying to justify what I did, but I can't anymore." I stood there, unsure if I should open my arms or close the door. I thought I was protecting Elaine, protecting myself. But I was just afraid of confrontation, afraid of being in the middle. "You were in the middle," I said, "and you let me fall." He nodded. "I'm sorry, Mom. I hurt you. I know. I don't deserve forgiveness." "But you're here," I said. "That means something." We hugged, messy, clumsy, but real. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion, but it was the beginning. We're not back to how things used to be, and maybe that's a good thing. Darren calls regularly now. We meet for coffee once a week. I've started seeing my grandson again, slowly, gently. Elaine and I are civil, distant, but civil. And that's enough. The pain is still there, but it's dulled, like a scar that no longer aches when you touch it. I've learned that love isn't always tidy. Family isn't always loyal. And forgiveness, it's not a gift you give the other person. It's a freedom you give yourself.